Operation Anaconda is a combined special operations and conventional force mission to destroy Al-Qaeda forces in the Shai-Kot Valley. Located in eastern Afghanistan near the Pakistani border, the valley floor is at 8,500 feet and surrounded by snow-capped mountains.
There were 3 villages within Shai-Kot Valley, and our special operators were convinced that there were about 150, maybe 200 foreign Al-Qaeda inside those villages. We looked at the escape routes, and that's what we were going to block, and we did in fact think that they were going to try to run. We knew some would stay and fight, but we thought they would try to get their key leaders out through those mountain passes.
For 2 days, U.S. conventional forces and clandestine special operation teams pressed the fight against Al-Qaeda amid the rocky terrain. Operation Anaconda is the largest U.S. land battle of the Afghan war, and resistance is fierce.
Their commander was calling this a jihad, and they thought that they were going to take on the Americans just as they had fought the Soviets in that same valley on 2 previous occasions and killed hundreds of them. Not only did they not run and continue to fight, they brought in reinforcements.
When the Americans landed there, they weren't facing any half-assed mountain boys. These men had been trained, they had been seasoned in warfare in Afghanistan.
They were well armed, they were well outfitted, they were in Gore-Tex, looked like it was right off the shelf. This was the jihad in which they were hoping the Americans would find themselves, and they were out there to kill us.
Multiple U.S. Navy SEAL, Special Forces, and coalition recon teams operating in the surrounding mountains coordinate air and artillery strikes and employ snipers.
The special operators were there to provide reconnaissance and to kill some of the Al-Qaeda that posed obvious threats to us.
In the early hours of day 3, an additional SEAL reconnaissance team, call sign Mako 3, prepares to insert on a mountaintop called Takur Gar, southeast of the battle.
To get a better view of what was going on in the valley, a decision was made to place a special operations team of 6 Navy SEALs plus an Air Force controller on top of Takur Gar Mountain.
Aircraft mechanical problems delay Mako 3's departure by over 4 hours, pushing the team dangerously close to inserting in daylight. But Mako 3's mission is deemed critical, and to make up time, the team bypasses their original landing zone located 2 kilometers from the top and prepares to insert directly at the summit, hoping to occupy a concealed position under the cover of darkness.
So they made that decision to go in there. In my view, that was the right call, because it was such a key piece of ground.
Now, that mountain had been hit extensively by AC-130 gunships, as well as close air support. However, intelligence could not see the fortified positions that were planted throughout that mountainside.
As Mako 3 hovers over the summit of Takur Gar, intense gunfire riddles their helicopter, causing it to turn violently and lurch down the mountainside at a 45-degree angle.
Somewhere in the commotion or as a result of the impact, Petty Officer Neil Roberts was launched out of the helicopter and landed upon the mountain. The helicopter was heavily damaged. It flew about 4 miles away, was able to land there.
They did a head count and confirmed that in fact they were missing someone, and it was those covert operators on the ground that said, we're going to go back and get him.
These 5 SEAL members plus an Air Force sergeant named John Chapman went right to the same spot that the original helicopter had been hit at and where Roberts had fallen out of.
As Mako 3 fights for life on the mountaintop, miles away at Bagram Airfield, 2 helicopters are loading up a Special Operations Quick Reaction Force to rescue Roberts.
The call came before dawn on the morning of March 4th. The helicopter had been down, some troops were in trouble. The early reports were very, very sketchy. The Rangers really were not quite sure what was going on.
I just laid down to go to sleep, and that's when they said, hey, get ready, we got a mission coming up. We got all our gear, ran into the headquarters there, and what's going on.
For quick reaction forces, the nature of the business is that you're going to get very little information. When you go somewhere, it's going to be a mission statement and commander's intent. And en route, if you're flying, you hope to get fed additional information so you're prepared for the fight when you arrive.
There are 2 helicopters, Razor 1 and Razor 2. Inside Razor 1, 10 Army Rangers, 3 Air Force pararescue and combat controllers, and 8 Army aircrew expect this to be a routine mission.
Tech Sergeant Kerry Miller from the Air Force was a pararescueman, and he had a fellow pararescueman with him, a senior airman named Jason Cunningham. They're getting ready for wounded. Staff Sergeant Gabe Brown is a combat controller with that team. His job is going to be communications. The Ranger team leader, Captain Nathan Self, has his Rangers, and they're preparing how they will set up when they hit the ground. So everyone had their own job as they were going in.
An urgent message from Bagram is radioed to Razor 1, instructing them to avoid landing on the mountaintop. But the message is miscommunicated, and Razor 1 unknowingly continues directly into the kill zone.
The intel we got was, hey, guy fell out of a helicopter, you guys are gonna go get him. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, we're gonna go land somewhere and set up a perimeter, the guy's gonna run on the back of the helicopter, we're gonna get on, we're gonna come back.
On the ground, Mako 3 has suffered 2 men dead, Neil Roberts and John Chapman, and 2 more badly wounded. As daylight breaks, their air cover gone, Mako 3 is forced from the mountaintop.
Primarily speaking to the men who were on Razor 1, which was the lead helicopter. They knew they were going in to get some guys out. But the specifics of what have happened to the previous helicopters that have taken fire and the enemy strongholds, they don't know in great detail.
Even as Mako 3 escapes down the eastern side of Takur Ghar, Razor 1, with Razor 2 in a trailing position, approaches the summit. It is not yet 6 o'clock in the morning.
As Razor 1 comes upon the mountain, they don't know what has taken place precisely. There are 2 people dead, a Navy SEAL and an Air Force combat controller. 2 helicopters have gone in and taken heavy fire. Now a 3rd is coming in and a 4th right behind it in order to get the SEAL team that is in harm's way upon that mountainside. As the sun was coming up over the mountains and they flared for the landing, all of the participants had unbuckled.
The Rangers were about 20 feet off the ground, and suddenly they were hit.
As many as 4 RPGs hit the helicopter. One of those RPGs hit at the rear at the point of the rotor blades, and it caused the helicopter to literally fall out of the sky.
And there was pandemonium. There were shots coming in through every which way in the helicopter, ricocheting off the inside.
To me, it all just blended together as the aircraft just started rocking and then hit the ground. It was all one big jolt.
This thing becomes a 52-foot bullet magnet. They're fighting over each other, trying to get out so they can form a defense and throw something back the enemy's way.
Inside the helicopter, each second lasts an eternity, as fate now becomes the hunter.
One of the door gunners, a crewman for the helicopter, Army soldier by the name of Svitak, lays out a blast from his gun to provide cover for the troops, and all of the enemy shooting with machine guns and an RPG hits right near his position. He's killed instantly.
A second man, Ranger Specialist Mark Anderson, is hit at the same moment, and now 2 men are dead within 15 seconds. When the left side door gunner is wounded, the helicopter is defenseless. Another RPG smashes into an oxygen canister and a fire breaks out. Razor 1 is facing annihilation.
All of a sudden, every enemy within earshot has seen this helicopter go down. They're launching every force they have at it, and these guys are trapped inside.
People were getting shot. It was crazy.
They were up against some hardcore Al-Qaeda. And the first thought, the first time it happens to you, is you can't believe that somebody's trying to kill you. I mean, that's just a natural human response.
Outside the helicopter, the Rangers struggle to get their bearings against a well-entrenched enemy.
Everything just happens. Okay, bam, we're on the ground. You move, you don't think about it, you just move. I jumped off the back of the helicopter, landed in that snow, and that's right about that point when the first thought process started. Okay, where is the enemy?
Gabe Brown told me that as they're going down the ramp, he notices Rangers on the right and on the left who have been cut down as they're debarking the aircraft. said, I don't know if they're dead at this point. I don't know what I'm supposed to do for them. And in a split second, he realized what he is supposed to do is go and establish communications and get help on the way. So he runs out, and that's where they form up outside the helicopter to determine, as he described it, what in the hell is going on here.
21-year-old PFC Matthew Collins and Sergeant Bradley Croce, 22, are killed while exiting the helicopter. Less than 5 minutes after crashing, 4 men are now dead and 1 is seriously wounded.
Moments after the aircraft crashes and all of the troops that are able to debark, they set up an immediate rally point just behind the helicopter.
It wasn't the prettiest execution, but everybody just flowed and reacted to the situation.
There were at least 2 enemy gun emplacements, one at the 8 o'clock position to the helicopter, which was taken out first by one of the Rangers, and then one at about the 2 o'clock position, about 50 yards off the nose of the helicopter, behind a big boulder and under a tree.
They were fighting at a slight angle up. They were fighting not only the enemy, but the weather and the terrain.
Once everybody gets in place, okay, we know what's going on, then it's Captain himself saying, okay, I want you here, I want you there, do this, do that.
Probably the 2 most critically wounded patients are the pilots themselves. One pilot has a hole through his wrist the size of a silver dollar. The other pilot has a significantly damaged leg in the assault. The right side pilot was in far greater danger physically, and that pilot had significant blood loss and he had significant injuries at that point.
15 minutes after Razor 1 has gone down, nearly all the Rangers are hit. With 4 dead and 3 badly wounded, Razor 1 struggles to regroup and establish communication with air support.
We didn't know where we were. We took a round in the helicopter, we're on the ground, and at this point, it's like, are we in the right spot? Are we where we're supposed to be?
Gabe Brown, he's trying to get anybody on the net, in the air, any platform that he can get to say that he's got a problem. But he has a bigger problem than he realizes because none of the frequencies work.
In addition to Brown's inability to make contact, their follow-on helicopter, Razor 2, has no idea of the situation on the mountaintop, where now the Rangers on the ground have eliminated 2 enemy positions but remain pinned down. When a bullet slams into Sergeant Joshua Walker's helmet,
Who do those guys think they are?
a sense of anger and indignation motivate Walker and the others to move to some rocks adjacent to the helicopter.
What they do is they set up 2 positions behind a rock face that's roughly 25 meters from the helicopter. What it does is it creates a buffer zone, and it gives them some cover, some concealment from the enemy, where they can keep them at bay for the moment, knowing that there are more enemy converging on that location.
Self decides his first move is to evacuate his wounded. As Self and Vance confer, enemy mortar fire begins zeroing in on their positions.
He wanted to put the LZ behind us and bring in a medevac bird to get the casualties out. What do you think about putting it down there in that little saddle? And about that time is when the mortar round hit right where he wanted it, and he looked at me, he's like, well.
Okay, that ain't gonna work. All right, it's time for plan B. Where's our air cover at?
We gotta take the top of the hill before we can do anything.
As the Rangers are solidifying their position and the pararescuemen have started to treat the wounded, the enemy about 300 meters away and behind a hill where they could not see them had established a mortar position.
It was like 2 different battles going on. They had their war that they were fighting, trying to keep the guys alive and treating them while we were fighting.
One well-placed mortar would have wiped out the entire group right there. So Kerry Miller made the call, let's get him out of the way of that shrapnel into a little bit of cover, which is an indication of the ferocity of that battle, that he chose to put them in a helicopter that is receiving enemy fire because that was the safest place for them at that point.
Gabe Brown remains unable to establish radio communications, but with the enemy positioned so close, air support is not viable in any case. The Rangers are sitting ducks unless they knock out the Al-Qaeda position. Captain Self decides his best chance is to launch a frontal attack.
Their first idea was to try to assault this bunker that was 50 yards off the nose of the helicopter, about the 2 o'clock position on a slight incline.
We were down behind the cover. Cap himself kind of briefed us on what's going to happen. Got a new mag in and everything. Okay, let's go.
Let's go!
He had everything lined up right. He had suppressing fire from a machine gunner. He had 4 men who were ready to go and take this task. The problem was they were going uphill to an enemy fortified position.
Halfway up the hill, Captain Self sees that the machine gun is well protected, entrenched inside a bunker impervious to small arms fire. Realizing his situation, he orders the others to fall back.
He quickly realized that he was putting his troops in a very dangerous situation by trying to pull this off. So he pulls them back, gets them back behind cover and concealment, and the discussion comes, well, what do we do now?
Gabe Brown finally makes contact with another combat controller, call sign Jaguar 1-2. The news is not good. More Al-Qaeda are heading up the mountain.
Within that first hour, he is able to establish direct communication not only with rear party elements and with headquarters staff, but also with airborne platforms that are controlling close air support.
It did take a little while, not too long, for him to say, we got some F-15s. Like I said, nobody looks at their watch. I couldn't tell you exactly how long it took, but it didn't seem like too long.
Twister 51601, I need close air now. Tone of voice sends a chill through you. The desperation tells you right away that you need to help him out.
It gets a little more intense when Gabe Brown relays to him, not only do I have a target on the ground, I need you to hit one specific pine tree.
He tells us we're in the down helicopter, we're taking incoming fire, and we have enemy position 75 meters away. And then he does what we call a talk on, where he starts to describe the area. The enemy is at 2 o'clock from the nose of the helicopter. They're 75 meters from us. I need guns only. I want passes north to south.
Chris Short kind of steps back and says, okay, let me get this straight. I'm moving at 575 miles an hour. You want me to use an air-to-air cannon, and you want me to hit a specific pine tree that's 50 meters away from the good guys. And Gabe Brown got back on the radio and said, that's exactly what I want.
The Rangers are 25 meters in front of Brown, who is unable to see the bunker from his rock. So Vance must relay a verbal picture of the terrain and enemy positions. Brown transmits this information to the F-15s overhead.
Guns only!
I did not want to overfly his position. I wanted to fly parallel to his position. If I screwed it up short or long, the bullets wouldn't harm him, they'd go into the mountain. We make a first pass rolling in, and we tell him we're rolling in north to south, and that we have the helicopter in sight.
Shot us 20 millimeter, and I watched the rounds impact all around the tree and the fighting position there. And I turned around to Gabe, and I was like, I was right on, tell him to keep doing that.
I heard him say good guns, more guns on that target.
Short coordinates with his wingman, and they make 5 more strafing runs. The Rangers get a breather, but the bunker remains intact. 2 more planes show up and now join the battle.
I get a call from Clash 7-1 about 3 minutes later. Clash 7-1 is 2 F-16s about 110 miles out, which is good news for me. It tells me we've got somebody inbound and somebody to help the situation.
Not only is it the 18th Fighter Squadron who answers the call, it's the squadron commander himself.
Clash 7-1 arrives on station as Junior Short and his wingman leave to refuel.
I talked immediately to Slick 01, and I immediately gave about a 250 round burst right onto the target area he wanted.
Divot Bartley and his wingman Rip Lapina shoot 1,000 rounds of ammunition in 4 more passes. As they leave to refuel, Short and his wingman Panzer return.
The enemy is hurt, but he's not killed. So now the difficult decision has to be made. What do we do? Do we drop bombs danger close? For a 500-pound bomb, that's about 425 meters. In a bad situation, you might get that down to around 300 meters. In this situation, they were 50 meters away.
Guys on the ground want to get that fire as close as they can to them until they can see it. Other people that are divorced from that want to creep it in and want to keep a buffer zone there so they don't inadvertently kill friendly soldiers. And I'm here to tell you, at my level where I sit, I can't make that call. That's not up to me. It's guys on the ground have to work through that.
Self decides his only option is to drop bombs danger close. Brown and the pilots walk bombs up the back of the hill towards the bunker, decreasing the distance by half with each bombing pass. After only 2 runs, Short and his wingman receive orders to leave the area. As the 2 F-15s leave, Bartley and his wingman are startled to hear Brown now requesting a bomb drop 50 meters from the Rangers' forward position.
He wanted it moved up right onto the bunker. But having flown F-16s for a number of years and flown close air support for a long time, I knew that I needed to make sure that I didn't kill them rather than the enemy. So I didn't want to bomb on the bunker, which was on the top of the mountain, where they would have taken direct fragments from those 500-pound bombs.
Divot Bartley was so concerned of how close they were that he would not let his wingman drop a bomb. He said if a bomb dropped and it killed friendlies, I didn't want him to live with that for the rest of his life.
When you're inside danger close, you need to get the ground commander's initials that they understand that you're dropping on their position.
Class 7-1, Class 7-1, this is Razor 1 actual. Razor 1 actual. To understand we are danger close.
It's accepting responsibility on the ground, saying, hey, no kidding, we really do want it that close. And here's a guy in charge, this is his initials to do that. And that's just Captain Self saying, hey, I'll take responsibility for it.
Make them count, boys.
When the last bomb is dropped, it is so close that Gabe Brown can hear the bomb in the air. It makes a rocketing sound, like a shaking sound.
The last bomb that he dropped was about 75 meters from us. When it hit on the reverse slope of the hill, and there's dirt and everything falling all around us.
And his comment on the radio was something I'll never forget. And Slick 01 said, whoa, you almost got us with that one. Can you get it a little closer to the bunker? I wasn't ready to do that. I didn't want to kill him. I just couldn't do it.
At this time, Bartley and Lapena are also ordered to depart the area, effectively removing all air support for the Rangers on the ground. Despite strafing and bombing, the Al-Qaeda bunker position is not destroyed and remains a danger to helicopters attempting evacuation. Nothing short of a direct hit is needed to take it out. That solution comes unexpectedly from an unmanned vehicle flying overhead, a Predator surveillance craft.
It turns out that this Predator UAV was owned and operated by the Central Intelligence Agency. Not only did it have a camera up on it, it also had a Hellfire missile. The UAV comes in and it takes out the bunker in one shot.
The bunker is destroyed and the situation calm when the Rangers are reinforced by Razor 2, who arrive on the summit after 4 hours of climbing up the steep mountainside.
All told, they figured were about 8 enemy dead, although it was unclear how many had been killed in the assault by the Rangers. The Rangers also came across the bodies both of the Navy SEAL, Neil Roberts, and of Air Force Tech Sergeant John Chapman.
The hill appears to be secure as the Rangers radio for medical evacuation. The medics begin to move the wounded in preparation for expected departure.
Suddenly they find themselves under attack again, not from the mountaintop, but from positions behind the helicopter and down the hill.
We started taking fire from about 300 meters away. I heard the rounds impacting around me.
As Senior Airman Jason Cunningham is moving one of the wounded, he takes a round just under his body armor. It goes up through his torso, and it's a pretty significant wound.
It became clear that the wound that had been suffered by Jason Cunningham was quite serious. Cunningham was losing a lot of blood. and there was even more urgency the Rangers and the air crews felt about getting evacuated. And they tried to convey this to headquarters.
Gabe Brown directs F-14 fighters to bomb the enemy position, and enemy gunfire decreases immediately. The mountaintop seems quiet once again as the Rangers renew their calls for medical evacuation.
Guy called me and asked me if the PZ was cold and how many we were going to lose. And so I yelled over to the Ranger medic. I said, "Hey Doc, how many are we going to lose if we wait till dark?" And he was like, 3. So I told him, we're going to lose 3 if we wait.
The Ranger commander, Captain Self, and a couple of others all got on the radio to headquarters and tried to impress on the command the urgent need for evacuation of the wounded. But at the same time, there were also reports from other U.S. troops positioned in the area, small teams of Al-Qaeda moving around the vicinity. So there was a great reluctance on the part of the commanders at headquarters to send in another rescue team.
Recognizing fully that it's more difficult for these kinds of operations to be executed in the daytime, and the propensity of the enemy to shoot down helicopters in daytime, you have to weigh that literally on a life-death situation, and you have to lean on the commanders to make those calls.
Night falls. Helicopters extract the Rangers and their dead from Takur Ghar. Among the dead is Jason Cunningham, who dies 1 hour before help arrives.
Some people have questioned whether or not that aircraft should have been brought in, and they question whether Jason Cunningham would have lived or not, and there's really no way to know that for sure. They knew that with the cover of darkness they would have a better chance of getting out of there unscathed. Unfortunately, that delay inevitably cost Jason Cunningham his life.
That was a decision made by the higher-ups. I'm not going to say their decision was wrong or right. They made the decision. That was a tough decision. I'm glad it wasn't my decision to make.
The fight on Takur Ghar is over, and 7 men are dead. But a lingering question remains. What is the balance between honoring the principle of rescuing endangered comrades versus the cost of incurring more dead and wounded?
In many cases, you won't come up with a perfect formula, but Takur Ghar does present this dilemma very starkly.
Once you got down on the ground, the frustration came bubbling up again, and I said that the process is broken. Why did this happen? Why weren't we allowed to stay there longer? Why wasn't the command and control better? Why didn't I know as soon as the helicopter went down? Why did it take so long? A lot of things that were out of people's control, but the frustration was there.
The fog of war as an excuse is not prevalent in what took place on Takur Ghar. There was a fog of war. I think it was thrown out too quickly as a reason for some of the problems. For example, fog of war was attributed to the communication problems, that radios had been shot or frequencies were not correctly used, and that was not at all what happened. What happened was there was a scramble, some men came together, they put their experience to the test, they put their courage on the line, they came up with a solution, and they saw it through. I think on Takur Ghar what you see is a battle that 5, 10, 15 years from now may be a faint memory, yet it encapsulates more than 2 centuries of heroism that has been the hallmark of the American military fighting man. You see a brotherhood there, you see courage unmatched, you see resolve that was stronger than the mountain itself. Inevitably, those things may fade away as time progresses, yet they are clear indications of things to come. Any Takur Ghar that lays in the future of the U.S. military is sure to find Gabe Browns and Kerry Millers and Nathan Selfs and Kevin Vances and Jason Cunninghams who will stand up to the challenge. It will find Junior Shorts and Divot Bartleys, and it will combine all of those elements to produce a victory.